Good evening and welcome to Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, the Executive Director of Rock Solid Families.
And I'm Merrill Hutchinson, President of Rock Solid Families. And we are excited to have you join us for the next 30 minutes as we talk about the good, bad, and ugly of relationships. A huge shout out to our sponsors, La Rosa's and Buffalo Wings and Rings in Greendale, Indiana, Greendale Cinemas, and Maxwell Construction. We are so thankful for these local businesses who have made this show possible. So whether you are listening live or online, Rock Solid Radio, helping to strengthen our community one family at a time on your hometown radio, Eagle Country 99.3.
Good evening. Welcome to Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, the Executive Director of Rock Solid Radio. And Hun, we have a fun show for you this evening.
Well, fun for us. I'm not so sure about everybody else involved.
Yeah, it's fun because it's about empowering and equipping our children for adulthood.
Yes.
Especially in the areas of money and work. You know?
Yeah, and I say that jokingly, like maybe it's not going to be fun for some, but it really does turn out to be pretty cool even for our kids. This is really going to be more about, this is a parenting show tonight and trying to help our kids understand money and its relationship to work and responsibility.
Yep.
And this is, if I had to say one thing that frustrates me in our system of education and how our kids graduate is our ignorance of how money works. Our ignorance of how money works. We're a capitalistic society, and so we're not strangers to money, but sometimes we act like strangers to the power of money and the influence of money.
I wish it was a prerequisite, a requirement for every student to go through some kind of economics class or budgeting class. I know they offer it in schools, but it's not mandatory, and it needs to be because it's such a huge part of their life.
We have so many other mandatory things, and this is one of those because you and I find in our work with families that one of the number one topics, and the top three topics that couples argue about is money. Because there's either a misunderstanding or confusion on how it works, or the problem that we find ourselves in because it doesn't go well
on spending and working.
So you can start, and you and I, this will be fun tonight. We're going to talk about, well, how do you set this up in your home, and when is the right starting time to do this? But hey, before we get there, how about mentioning out to our sponsors that we need to say thank you?
Yeah, we are so thankful for our sponsors, Maxwell Construction and Buffalo Wings and Rings, Greendale Cinemas, and La Rosa's Pizza. Without them, we wouldn't be here, and they are such a huge support of the community and this program, and so we just thank them for all they do for us.
Okay, very good. So let's talk about some of our upcoming events coming up. We're pushing and driving our parenting classes at Bright Elementary, 6:30 to 8 o'clock in the library there at the school. The next one coming up is not too far away, February 27th, when school is tough. So we're going to talk about social emotional challenges for kids, academic challenges for kids. How do we deal with them? How do we parent those kiddos in that situation? But also, how do we recruit the school in those situations?
Partner together.
Yeah, because we need all the help we can get in some of these situations.
Right.
And I love working in an elementary school because you have such an opportunity at that young age to make a change.
Absolutely. So that's not just for Bright Elementary parents. It's for any parent at Bright Elementary's library from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Again, February 27th is when school is tough. Then March 13th, we'll be talking about parenting in a tech-heavy world, which I want to get to those elementary age, preschool age, and middle school age parents where we can really make a difference in setting healthy parameters for our students and technology.
Yeah, boy, that's such a rich topic. We find ourselves continuing to talk and blog and write and teach on that because of what we see. I had a conversation with an assistant principal at a school here in the area, and she's an assistant principal in charge of discipline. And I was just talking about how her job was going, and without me prompting, she said, if I could get rid of cell phone use and technology in our building, 90% of my discipline issues would be gone.
Yeah.
That is staggering.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
And then April 24th. Oh, I almost forgot. April 24th. Us talking a little bit about the parenting structure in the home. Who's the boss in your house?
Yeah.
So we talk about being an authoritative parent, what that looks like, and why we are called to be an authoritative parent.
Yeah. So tonight's topic again is about parenting of chores and allowance and that whole money and work kind of thing. If you struggle with what we're going to talk about tonight and you don't know how to set up those healthy boundaries with your kids, this class is for you that I'm teaching right now called Healthy Boundaries. It's going on at Whitewater Crossing on Wednesday nights from 7 to 8. So we'd love to have you, how to say no, when to say yes. It's just a great class. I love it. I love the people in it.
Yeah. And other things, we are having our finishing exercise classes 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. So come on out and join us. Monday, Wednesday, Friday is at 8 a.m. Tuesday, Thursday is at 6 p.m. and Saturday is at 9 a.m. So come on out. We do personal training along with those classes. So give me a call. Let me see if I can help you out.
Join me on Monday morning. Tomorrow morning I'll be there bright and early.
You'll be there.
So then why is this topic so important?
Okay, so it is important for the reasons that we talked about initially, teaching our kids to manage money. But it's also important because it teaches, it is a method for us to teach servanthood, which is something we drive home as being extremely important, responsibility, being part of the home and not the home. You know, we've talked before about raising kids, and at the wonderful age of around 2 years old, we have our terrible twos, and that's when that little 2-year-old finally discovers that in his mind, he's the center of the universe. And you know, our belief is that from that age, our job as parents is to start to make bring them in to be more Christ-like. And Christ did not come to be served, but to serve. And so this is really the start of teaching service.
We just have a really important responsibility and opportunity as parents to do some cool things when their kids are young that will bear much fruit when they're older. And hon, you and I grew up with very different philosophies
We sure did.
about money in our homes. The Hutchinson house versus the Rue house. It was one of the very first conversations we had to have as our two families merged. How would we raise our children based on how we were raised? And so I think we've done a pretty good job of compromising and coming to a place where we think is healthy for our kids. But not every couple has that conversation. Not every family has that merging that's pretty painless.
Yeah, and you're right. You know, our homes grew up very differently in this way. You guys came up with a much more conservative view and use of money.
In some ways.
In some ways. I mean, your parents were savers and those kind of things. My parents were, man, if it was in their pockets, it was going to find a way out quickly. But the other side that our parents did in the Hutchinson house was if you wanted it, you needed to earn the money to buy it. And so
me, not so much.
Yeah, not so much. You had a little bit of a silver platter there at times, but you know, we're going to talk a little bit about that and just try to approach it in a healthy way for your home.
Yep. Parents are the number one teachers of money management. One study reported in Forbes magazine discovered that a child's money habits are formed by the age of 7.
That is crazy. I'd still have to. I think the view on money, they probably start to see that. But there's so much more tied to money.
Sure.
And so we'll have to kind of explore
we have a
some
chance.
of that.
So there's different philosophies, even on the word allowance. We're going to be talking about chores and allowance, but many parents want to attach a dollar figure to each chore. Others believe in a flat amount of money each week based on age. You know, we're going to be talking about what we've arrived at in our home, but that doesn't make it the be and all.
Right. And this
answer.
is, we really have appreciated the work of Dave Ramsey and his agency, his group, because he's really brought a spotlight onto a lot of this.
Money management.
And he does not call this allowance.
Yeah. What does he want? Did he say commission or something?
Commission or something. So, and again, we really don't want to get tied up in the language.
Right.
So much is what is the lesson and how do we use the lesson to be make ourselves more healthy in our relationships and in our money?
Yeah, so we were going to talk about how we can help our kids learn these lessons now so they can become more self-motivated, successful adults. It's more about the lessons we're teaching versus the chore actually getting done. So,
So let's talk a little bit, and not that we have it perfect, because we tweak and we alter things now and then based on, you got to think on your feet a little bit sometimes, okay?
When it's not working.
but the biggest thing we want to do is try to think on our feet the least amount of times possible. We want to have a plan.
Right,
absolutely.
absolutely.
And if we're thinking on our feet, that means we're probably in an emotional state. And I just had a conversation with a parent last night about this, that she was so tired of her son just banging on her door.
Beat her up.
And she finally said, just whatever, and she gave in, and it happened to involve money. And so let's explain what we do.
Okay.
As not the perfect example, but as an example.
Yeah. So in our home, we decided that we're giving a flat fee, flat allowance based on their age. So we have 3 children right now in the home. So, and they all love it when they get a birthday because they get an extra $1, but it's based on their age. So we have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and an 11-year-old. So they get that much money each week. And with that amount of money each week, they must put at least 10% into their giving. We kind of rounded that, but an offering that's going to church or some kind of donation to somebody.
So let me stop right now.
Yeah.
So right now, this is one of we are not paying them necessarily for work. We're providing a money resource to help give them to something to work with.
Yeah.
Okay, we know that, especially where we live, there's not like a ton of neighbors to go out and do jobs for and things like that. So we're giving them a money source to start with. But the very first thing we talk about is the giving part.
Yep. The
giving part. And you know what? I know when we first start teaching our kids that, they're like, really? Do I have to give this to church or a charity or whatever? Yep. The very first fruit. Comes off and goes into that. And we call that the first 10%.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's really cool now is that our children that we've adopted have been in our home 3 years now. And we just did Allowance this past week or a week or so ago. And our youngest had extra money that he had gotten for his birthday and stuff. And he literally handed me a 20 and said, Mom, will you put that in the offering envelope? And, that wasn't prompted by anybody. I didn't ask him to do it. I said, are you sure you want to do that? But he's like, yeah, I want to give that to the offering. Yeah. So that was his decision to give out of the overflow of his heart. And that's what we want to get to as adults. So that's an awesome thing to do.
Right. And then, so 10% there, and then we do 20% in savings.
Yeah.
And so that's, we pay God, and then we teach them to pay themselves.
Yep.
Before they pay anything else,
yep.
They've got to pay themselves.
And we opened up a savings account for all 3. We physically went into the bank with them. We opened them up. When we deposit money, I physically take the kids and let them put their money out there. I want to show them how that works. And then they're writing in their little bank statement thing what the money is. Obviously, it's all done digitally now. But for them, I remember being a kid and writing it in my little bank account book. And I want them to do the same. So that's a great thing. And they're learning how that's building for them.
And then there's 70% left, right? And that 70% is theirs to spend.
Yep.
And so, but here's the kicker, Mom and Dad. Here's the kicker. We do not give our kids any other money. That is their money now to manage. So when they want to go to Kings Island with a friend, when they want to go to a movie, when they want to go buy a snack, they do not now come to us and say, can I have $10? Can I have $15? No, because they have the money. If they have spent it poorly
on
or
a junk
on
toy
junk,
at Walmart,
which by the way, they have, okay. But now it teaches them at an extremely young age, whoa. But here's the powerful thing. We see this with our youngest. That boy can pack some money away.
Does,
and the next thing you know, he's buying his own hoverboard. Or he's buying, some $100, $200 toy or entertainment that he saved for. And so this is the part that has freed us up. There's times where our kids have wanted to go do things, go to the movies or whatever, and we're like, Well, how much money do you have?
Right.
$3. I'm like, well, you're going to watch the first 5 minutes of that movie.
And mostly, I mean, we do take them out to the movies and take them out to dinner that we pay for.
Right.
But this is more of, hey, they're at a football game or they're at a basketball game and they want concession stand stuff. Or they want to buy, we were at the Globetrotters game a while back and our little one wanted to buy a basketball. It was a $25 basketball, but he really wanted it. And I said,
Which,
do you have...
by the way, I saw down in the woods yesterday.
Oh, no. But, I said, do you have the money? I have the money and his envelope. And so that was a choice he made to spend that much money. So, we're not the ATM.
Right.
And it's really awesome to see them make good choices and then make bad choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then at this, something that we implemented here more recently, and you prompted this because I think you were a little bit torqued about a few things. But so this is not for their job list, okay, like that they have, but they have general chores around the house.
Responsibilities as part of the house.
Yeah, and you know what? At the age of 2. At the age of 2. Now, we may not be talking much money that they can understand everything, but they do start chores.
Yep.
Clean up your toys, those kind of things.
Which sometimes involves a meltdown, like, I can't do it.
Yeah, it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
So because our house only functions if everybody is partaking.
Yep.
And so whether it's making the bed or cleaning a bathroom, each one of our kids knows that typically it's Saturday, but there's a chore day, and they're going to have to knock it out.
Yep.
And so I do like, we have a couple of our kiddos occasionally adopt an attitude about things.
Yep.
And so their quality of work has dropped.
Right.
And so, but in their mind, they don't think that should be.
Because we haven't
affecting them.
tied chores to money.
Right.
We haven't said, okay, you do, if you clean the bathroom, that's $1. We haven't tied it to that. But we do expect a level of quality.
Because we need their help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so, they did a little self-grading, and that was kind of fun.
Awesome.
Like, okay, so how hard do you think you worked or contributed to our house this week?
The quality of your work this week.
And so one of them, about 70%.
Yep.
And so that week they got 70%. So they lost 30% right off the get-go. And they were like, whoa. And it's just like, hey, guys, you know what? This is not an ATM.
Yeah.
This is, you have to contribute to our home.
Right.
Okay.
There's a work expectation. So we did that trick recently because the quality of the chores was not getting done. So I asked them to self-evaluate. They didn't know, by the way, this was going to be tied to their chore, their allowance. But one said 70%, one said 80%, and one said 100%, which I actually agreed.
I was going to say, most of the time that we've ever done that, it is amazing how when you're looking at them eye to eye, because you can call them out quickly,
Right.
but they usually pretty much nail what percentage of
So that week,
contribution.
they got 70%, 80%, and 100% of their allowance. But then I said, because this isn't going to last very often, I said, Dad and I, from now on, are going to evaluate at the end of the week the percentage of quality that you did. And that's the percentage. Honey, I'm telling you, you were not there at dinner last night. But they were kicking it when it came to the dishes because I told them I'm going to be watching for effort and attitude. And it was really kind of interesting. The littlest one is the one that's the most perceptive of that. And he
gets it,
killing it.
So, and then beyond that, something that we do is if I'm doing, let's say I've got to cut a big tree down in the yard or whatever, and it's just going to be a big job, and I'm going to be at it all day on a Saturday or something with cutting and splitting wood and all that, and it's just out of the norm. I have no problem with paying them a little bit for that because they've helped me out. I want them to know that I value that, and other than a thank you, I think it's just kind of a neat way for them for me to say, hey, you know what? Thanks a lot. Here's an extra little bit of money.
Yeah.
So paying for extra chores outside of the regular is something that we're not opposed to at all.
Right. So before we go any deeper, hon, I do want to make sure we say, as a parent, you got to model what you want for your kids. So if you're out of control with your money, kids are going to see that. Yeah. If you learn to give and to save and to spend wisely, they pick up on that. My dad was a great money manager. He taught me very early on. He had a credit card, which Dave Ramsey would say you don't need. But he had a credit card, but he always paid it off. He never kept a balance. And he always was very very mindful of what he spent it on. And so that really helped me as a young adult to learn that as well. And also, you could teach money management and life skills very early. Take a kid to the grocery with you and talk about, okay, do we buy the generic peanut butter or do we spend an extra $1 on our favorite brand, Jif, And so you can kind of talk to them about that. And when it's their money, it's funny how they will think differently when, they're spending it on something, how they will go for the generic or the cheaper brand.
Right, and teach them the quality of what is a value. If they buy something for $5 but it breaks as soon as they get it, that's not a good value, even though it was maybe $10 cheaper than they could have found it. And so teaching them about value and quality is a great learning experience. And every item's a little bit different, for value and quality. So these are great conversations.
So preschoolers start with one or two things, a lot of grace involved, make it something simple, even work alongside them. Elementary age, a simple chore list, expectations, be specific. When I said to the kids, clean the bathroom, oh my goodness. I had to say, you clean the inside of the toilet, the outside of the toilet, the sink, the floor, the tub, the mirror. I had to lay it out because their idea of cleaning it, mine was different.
Yeah, well, we talked about that a little bit with any of our chores, especially if you're going to start to implement this right away, and your kids don't really know the expectation. You do. You have to go through. Some kids are self-starters. Some of them,
you might even have to show it first.
Exactly. We've talked about the idea of even sometimes if you want a room cleaned up, you need to take a picture of what a cleaned up room looks like and hang it up in the room so that they see, there aren't any shoes on the floor, or the bed's made, or whatever it is. So, you got to walk them through it. It takes a little bit of time, but once you do, they've got the picture.
Yeah. Preteens, require them to earn the money to pay for things like summer camp, maybe extra chores, walking a neighbor's dog. Help them to see where their spending is adding up, whether it be they get a Gatorade after school every day, and that's $2, or they buy a cookie at lunch, and that's $1. Teenagers, have them get a job. Save for things that they want to do, like a car. We're in that stage right now.
Right. Well, I want to back up just for a second because we have one of our kids the other day presented to us, and I love the way he did this too, because it's a church event, right? That he wants to go to a camp,
summer camp conference,
a conference this summer. We're like, okay, that's cool. That sounds good. What's it cost? About $320, and we're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Now we know. Listen, he's a good kid, but we know he's got ulterior motives. All of his buddies are also going to this, okay? And so we said, you know what? That's a great idea. That sounds cool. We'll pay for half. And all of a sudden, a little bit of his motor went flat.
They got all kinds of great ideas if they're spending your money.
Yeah. And so, again, because it creates an investment on his part. Because if he doesn't want to invest in that, then I know his investment is not going to be for the right thing when he is there.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in that car saving thing. By the way, the savings is not for the hoverboard. The savings is something for big, like a car. Or whatever. But
education, anything. It's for the big thing that's, that
they can't just earn in a week or two. So don't just let them pull that money out whenever. Start talking about post-high school education and training, college, trade school, military, work. What's the best value for your child? Public college, everybody has this great idea of going to this big private college until they see the dollar signs around it. Ivy Tech, to get your prerequisites for a year, sounds pretty good when you're investing in it.
Well, I've said this for a year coming through as an educator, but also being raised in a blue-collar working family. I always had that mixed feeling of college versus, the trades, because I have seen over the years so many of us, and now it's just blown up.
College
but so many
debt.
of us push college, but now that college is blown up to such an incredible expense that parents, please, you are not doing your kids a service by saying you have to go to college. You first need to know what your kid is about and what the value is for that kid.
And what's the right fit for them.
Right, and so if I go drop, $30,000, $40,000 a year, and all of a sudden the kid's an undecided major, It's crazy.
I'm sure he's not listening, but I had a classmate of mine in college that I went to high school with, new in high school, and he literally spent his whole freshman year in the rec room playing ping pong. He literally failed every class, but his parents were paying for it all.
Yeah.
Why bother, All right, we got to keep moving along here, baby.
Yeah. I do want to say, talk about credit cards.
Yeah.
Kids don't understand interest. They don't understand that. They don't understand that the credit card could be good, but it could also be a trap.
Yeah.
And so
our kids don't get the ATM.
No,
they think they can just go there and get money
ever.
anytime you want.
And so teaching that, man, somebody had to put that cash in there.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about an emergency fund.
Yeah.
That emergency fund is something more of a practice of habit, especially for when they get a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
Life happens, and we see it all the time in our house, right? The refrigerator breaks down, the car breaks down, somebody's in an accident.
Their phone breaks.
Which we actually are dealing with that. That phone's not as waterproof as he thought.
No. And it costs a lot more than you have money
and so
for.
Right now, that phone is sitting on a table and not being used because somebody doesn't have an emergency fund. And
you sound like Dave Ramsey there.
Yeah. And so anyway, that's kind of fun, but that's a learning lesson. Mommy and Daddy aren't taking care of that phone for him. He needs to take care of that.
The Galatians 5:22, I love this verse about the fruit of the Spirit in our lives. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Mom and Dad, now is the time to help teach self-control. But if you don't have it yourself, then the kids aren't going to be picking that up.
Well, we've talked about this so many times. Self-control is one of the number one indicators of an overall success and happiness in a person's life. How about, our oldest does not like this one at all right now. Hebrews 12:11. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful.
But later on.
Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Our goal is not to make sure our son gets happy with a brand new phone. Our goal is that when he's 40 years old,
he will remember
that he is in a more stable and controlled place in his life, that he's not being dictated by money. He's not a slave of money.
And part of the pain, we know kids have accidents, and our son did break his phone recently, and he called Apple right after it happened, and the Apple guy told him, whoever that was, said that they could have another one, a brand new one, delivered to our door tomorrow. And he came up with the biggest smile on his face, like, look, I can get a brand new phone tomorrow. And I was more mad about that than I was the accident. Like, no, that's not how life works. This is a $1,000 phone you just drowned.
Yeah.
And we're going to have some consequences here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So our challenge, okay? So our challenge this week is that you do the 3 jars, or in Ramsey's work, Dave Ramsey, he would talk about the envelopes. Okay?
Yeah, we have envelopes.
Yeah, and so first off, to keep them somewhere safe where the kids can't dip into them or sneak things out, and start to set these containers up and start to set up something for spending, something for savings, and for giving. And then, of course, working is something that it's never too early to set up this chore list, this responsibility list. So start to create those. Let your kids know what work is. It's okay for them to sweat.
Sure. As they get older, increase the responsibility and the trust. Maybe it's running the mower. Maybe it's babysitting younger siblings. The Bible says you don't work, you don't eat. So don't reward your kids in the home when they just, do their expected chores and have followed your clear expectations. Let's make sure that they understand that's an expectation of being part of our family.
All right, we need to close it out. The funniest thing while doing this entire show is in the back of my mind, I constantly see all 3 of our kids' face. And I know that if they were in this studio right now, boy, well, let me tell you what I think. But here's the bottom line. They have come to love how this works. They can't wait for Allowance Day. And because they sit around and they know, hey, this is good because they're learning to manage it. All right, we're going to close things out. A special thanks out there to Maxwell Construction, Buffalo Wings and Rings, Greendale Cinemas, and La Rosa's Pizza. Guys, thank you so much for allowing us to do what we do here on the radio. Listeners, we just ask for your continued support. Let's go out there and let's make it a great night and make it a great week.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. For help or more information about what you've heard this evening, contact us at rocksolidfamilies.org or call us at 812-576-ROCK. That's 812-576-ROCK. Again, a huge thanks to our sponsors, La Rosa's and Buffalo Wings and Rings in Greendale, Indiana, Greendale Cinema, and Maxwell Construction. If you have questions you'd like answered on air or want to chime in on something you heard this evening, go to our Facebook page, Rock Solid Families. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to tune in next Sunday evening at 7:30 for another episode of Rock Solid Radio. I'm Linda Hutchinson, and for my husband Merrill and I, thanks for tuning in on your hometown radio, Eagle Country 99.3.